This wonderful prep day. Hope you're having a good mornings thus far and enjoying your life. We have the 6th and 7th readings of the Aliyah today, the Aliyot of Parashah Shemot, the first Parashah of the book of Exodus. So it's been a great time of study this entire week already. And today we have some really, really powerful insights. And so I want to get to the reading so we can get to those as soon as possible. I want to say Toda Rabah to some of you who have contacted us either through the text to give or through the website or have called the office directly and have contributed and supported Sar Shalom Synagogue and Lapid Judaism, and particularly because you love the Aliyah Day. So thank you so much, Toda Rabah, for answering that call. And I would just ask if you're a regular viewer, or maybe you're just somebody who's just happened upon us, whatever the case, you love the content, you're so excited about what you're learning every day. We're glad to be here, and we're able to be here because of you. So please, if you would, give us the opportunity to continue by contributing and blessing with your financial giving. That was so important. And as I said, you can text to give, you can use our website, you can call and talk to Couture personally. Either way, however you want to do it, it's a great blessing. So, Toda Rabah. We are in Parashah Shemot. As I said, we are in chapter 4, and verse 18. Baruch Hashem, this is where the 6th Aliyah begins. And it says, so Moshe went and returned to Jether, his father-in-law, and said to him, let me now go back to my brethren who are in Egypt. So Moshe has received the call to ministry, and he is now going back to his father-in-law and asking permission to go back to Mitzrayim to undertake the mission to which God has called him. Let me now go back to my brethren who are in Egypt and see if they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moshe, go to Shalom. Notice the expression there. He says, lech le Shalom, go to Shalom. So he's giving, his father-in-law is giving him a blessing, basically, saying that your blessing, your mission is going to be one of success. It's going to be one of Shalom. You know, when we bless people with Shalom, we bless them with nothing missing, nothing broken. But we also know that one of God's names is Shalom. God has many names, and one of his names is Shalom, like Sar Shalom, Prince of Peace. That's the name of the Mashiach, right? One of his names. So he's saying, go to the Mashiach, go to Hashem, go to Shalom. Lech le Shalom, go to Shalom. Incidentally, God willing, the drash on Shabbat tomorrow is going to be about Yeshua going to the Jordan and being mikvahed by Yochanan the Immerser. We're going to explore that text, and we're going to find out why Yeshua went to Yochanan to be immersed in the Jordan. And we're going to be looking at that because it was almost like his commissioning, if you will, to start his ministry, just like we're reading here in this parashah for the Redeemer Moshe. So Hashem said to Moshe in Midian, go return to Egypt, for all the people who seek your life have died. Just like Yeshua, who the angel talked to Yeshua's earthly father, Yosef, and said, you can go back now because the one who was seeking the life of the son is dead. So Moshe took his wife and son, mounted them on the donkey, and returned to the land of Egypt. Again, this is the supernatural donkey the insights bring down. This is the same donkey that led Isaac to Mount Moriah, and this is the same donkey that's going to be taking Mashiach to Yerushalayim. It's a supernatural donkey. So Moshe took his wife and sons, mounted them on a donkey, and returned to the land of Mitzrayim, and Moshe took the staff of God in his hand. Notice it says the staff of God. We talked about this staff and how it's a supernatural staff. It's made out of sapphire. I don't know if I've mentioned it to you exactly, but this is the staff. I don't want to go too far into the story, but just a quick thing. You remember most of you probably know, have heard about the sword and the stone from King Arthur days. where the sword was in the stone. Whoever could pull the sword out of the stone was to be the king. And of course, Arthur was the one who was able to pull the sword out of the stone, and therefore he became king. Well, that story probably, I don't know, but probably came from the Midrashic stories about this staff, because this staff was made out of sapphire. It was a holy staff, a supernatural staff, and it was stuck, as it were, in the garden of Jethro. And nobody could pull it out. And the idea was anybody who could pull the staff out would be considered the Redeemer of Israel. And so along comes Moses. He's walking through the garden. His father-in-law says, "Isn't this beautiful?" He said, "It is." "What is that?" "It's a staff. Nobody can pull it out." And Moses reaches over there and grabs the staff and pulls it right out. So this is the staff of God. Adonai said to Moses, "When you go to return to Mitzrayim, see all the wonders that I put in your hand and perform them before Pharaoh, but I shall strengthen his heart and he will not send out his people." Again, Hashem is strengthening the heart of Pharaoh so that he will not let the people go. Why does he do this? He does this so that the wonders and magnificent power of God can be illustrated over and over again. And it's a very interesting point, because in our human condition, in our human mind, we would think, you know what? We should be able to go there and God should just, boom, set us free, because the goal is to set us free. Yes, it is the goal, and we will be set free. But in the meantime, Hashem has to do some things to kind of work his power, to show himself strong. He's trying to reach people. Ultimately, Hashem, you have to understand, Hashem, the goal of the Exodus was not just to let the people of Israel go. The goal of the Exodus was to reach some Egyptians as well. Hashem wanted to reach some Egyptians and bring them into the faith. This is the mixed multitude that came out. He wanted to show himself, not just to Egypt, but the entire world. So sometimes when it looks like our redemption is not happening on our timetable, we have to understand that the redemption is going to happen. It's not a question of if it will happen. I'm talking here about, I'm talking here about our personal redemption. I'm talking about, personal things in our lives. I'm also talking about corporate things. I'm talking about national things. I'm talking about, the nation in terms of the nation of Israel. But a lot of times it's not that our redemption is not going to happen. It's just that Hashem is doing some things to show himself strong. Now, that's not always easy. When you're in the middle of a personal crisis, that's not always easy to digest. As you go, "Oh, okay, no problem. I got time. Just take your time. The lions are coming. The fire is hot. It's okay. Whenever is good for you is good for me." It's not easy for us to do that, but we have to understand that God will save us. And he's going to save us in his good timing when all of his plans are going to come to fruition. Because remember, it's not just about us. See, our redemption, our salvation is not just about us. That's the thing that Moshe and frankly, the children of Israel didn't understand. They thought it was all about them. That's why they were like, "Wait a minute, this is taking too much time. We're being oppressed. You came here to save us, but now we're being oppressed all the more." And Hashem is saying, "It's not just about you guys. I'm trying to do some other things as well." So he says he's going to harden his heart. So said Hashem, "My firstborn son is Israel. So I say to you, send out my son that he may serve me. But you have refused to send him out. Behold, I shall kill your firstborn son." So Hashem is announcing that the last plague before Moses even leaves to go to. Moses is still packing his saddlebag and still putting it on the donkey. And Hashem is already telling him the end of the story. Verse 24, "It was on the way in the lodging that Hashem encountered him and sought to kill him. So Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and touched it to his feet. And she said, 'You caused my bridegroom's bloodshed.' So he released him. Then she said, 'A bridegroom's bloodshed was because of circumcision.'" Now, there's a lot of mystery to that particular story. We're not going to get into the insights of that. There's a lot of mystery surrounding that. But let me just say, and I intend this to be an encouragement to all of us, because Moses is considered in Judaism, obviously, to be pretty much the greatest leader who's ever lived, the greatest prophet who's ever lived. there's many people within Judaism, both in modern times and in antiquity, who ask the question, can there be anybody greater than Moses? The answer is generally, the implied answer is no, there isn't. He's the best of the best. And that says a lot, because there's some really, really great biblical heroes and biblical characters out there. I mean, we could go through and name them all, right? But Moses is the best of the best. And yet, it even says in the insights how flawed he was as a leader. He lacked faith. At times he lacked courage. And in this particular instance, for whatever reason, he hadn't circumcised his sons. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, you're the Redeemer. You're the chosen one. Your house was filled with light when you were born. And the very basic of the basic is circumcise your sons on the 8th day, according to the covenant of Abraham, which is the covenant of God, which is the Holy Bible, which is God's holy word. And you just didn't do it. And the insights bring down that this was a failure in leadership. And so it's phenomenal to think of Moshe in those terms, and yet look how powerfully he was used. Look how powerfully he was used. And the encouragement to all of us is that God uses us in spite of ourselves. But the one redeeming quality about Moshe, as was the case with King David, as was the case with King Solomon, as was the case with virtually every hero, to include the disciples such as Kepha, was that when they were confronted with their flaws, they didn't make excuses. They didn't blame somebody else. They didn't try to wiggle their way out of it. They dealt with it. And because they were willing to deal with it, because they were willing to make teshuvah, because they were willing to say, yep, that's right. You are right, Hashem. That is a flaw I have. And I am guilty. And here I go to make corrections. God says, that's somebody I can work with. But the person who refuses to make the teshuvah, the person that blames somebody else for their problems, the person who just says, oh, I'm innocent, you're the guilty one, that's somebody, that's not going to work out good. So let that be an encouragement to us. So it says in verse 27, Hashem said to Aaron, go to meet Moshe to the wilderness. So he went and encountered him at the mountain of God, and he kissed him. Moshe related to Aaron all the words of Adonai that he had dispatched to him and all the signs that he had commanded him. Moshe and Aaron went and gathered all the elders of the children of Israel. Aaron spoke all the words that Hashem had spoken to Moshe, and he performed the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed, and they heard that Hashem had remembered the children of Israel, and he saw their affliction, and they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. Capítulo 5, verso 1 is the beginning of the 7th Aliyah, chapter 5, verse 1. Afterwards, Moshe and Aaron came and said to Pharaoh, so Hashem said to the God of Israel, so Hashem, the God of Israel, said, send out my people that they may celebrate me in the wilderness. Now, there's somewhat of a funny insight, but it also relates back to the gospel stories. Because we just read in verse 29 and 30 and 31 that Moshe and Aaron show up to the elders and, hey, here's the mission. Here's the signs. He actually shows them the signs. And the elders like, right on. This is awesome. He says, so here's the plan. We're going to go to Pharaoh, and we're going to tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And all the elders are like, yep, let's do this. But in verse 1 of chapter 5, we read, Moshe and Aaron came unto Pharaoh. What happened to the elders? Well, as I said, there's a funny insight that Rabbi Monk brings down that says, as they were going to the capital, as they were going to the palace, the elders started falling away one by one, one by one, until there was nobody left. Until when they got to the capital, to the palace, it was just Moses and Aaron. And so it reminds me, of course, of the gospel accounts where all the disciples abandoned Mashiach when he went to confront the Satan, so to speak. And it's just kind of a funny, to me, is a funny picture in my mind. But again, these are the elders. Now, again, remember, these are the elders of Israel. These are the guys who eventually are going to make up the Sanhedrin, who eventually are going to go to Mount Oreb, Mount Sinai, and they're going to eat lunch and look at God while they're eating. And by the way, they didn't pack a lunch. They're actually eating of the divine presence. So these are the cream of the cream. These are creme de la creme. And the creme de la creme said, yeah, wow, the signs. Okay. Oh, yeah. You talked to God. I believe it. All right, let's go talk to Pharaoh. Let's do it. And we go out to talk to Pharaoh. And as we're on our way, we're dropping like flies. And then again, this is just all to teach us that we're all human beings. And God is accustomed to working with human beings. That doesn't mean that we're not supposed to be faithful. It doesn't mean that we're not supposed to work on our faith. It doesn't mean that we're not supposed to be encouraged. It doesn't even mean that what they did was right. All it means is that we can relate. And that we should have compassion upon our other people. And we should have empathy with other people. And we should understand other people. And you know what else it means? It means that we should have compassion upon ourselves. And we should have understanding upon ourselves. And it also means that God knows. God knows. Some of the best that he's ever raised in this universe. When it came time for the rubber to meet the road, the tire blew out. So God is not surprised. So it says in verse 2, Pharaoh replied, who is Hashem that I should heed his voice to send out Israel? I do not know Hashem, nor will I send out Israel. So they said, the God of the Hebrews happened upon us. Let us now go for a 3-day journey into the wilderness, and we shall bring offerings to Hashem, our God, lest he strike us dead with the plague of the sword. The king of Egypt said to them, Moshe and Aaron, why do you disturb the people from this work? Go to your own burdens. And Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now numerous, and you would have them cease from their burdens. On that day, Pharaoh ordered the taskmasters over the people and his foremen, saying, you shall no longer give straw to the people to manufacture the bricks as yesterday and before yesterday. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the quota for bricks that they were making yesterday and before yesterday, you shall impose upon them. Do not reduce it, for they are lazy. Therefore they cry out, saying, let us go and bring offerings to our God. Let the work be heavier upon the men, and let them engage in it, and let them not pay attention to false words. We kind of see a pattern here that it kind of seems like it's going to get worse before it gets better. The taskmaster of the people and its foreman went out and spoke to the people, saying, so said Pharaoh, I am not giving you straw. Go yourselves and take yourselves straw from whatever you find, for nothing will be reduced from your work. So the people spread out through the entire land of Mitzrayim to gather gleaning for straw. The taskmasters pressed, saying, complete your work, the daily matter each day, and when there was straw. The foremen of the children of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmaster had appointed over them, were beaten, saying, why did you not complete your requirements to make bricks as yesterday and before yesterday, even yesterday and even today? The foreman of the children of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh, saying, why do you this to your servants? Straw is not given to your servants, yet you tell us, make bricks. Behold, your servants are being beaten, and it is a sin for your people. He said, you are lazy, therefore you say, let us go and bring offerings to Adonai. Now go to work. Straw will not be given to you, but you must provide the quota of bricks. The foreman of the children of Israel saw them in distress when they said, do not reduce your bricks, the daily matter each day. They encountered Moshe and Aaron standing opposite them as they left Pharaoh's presence, and they said to them, may Hashem look upon you and judge you, for you have made our very scent abhorrent in the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of his servants, to place a sword in their hand to murder us. So they're rejecting the Redeemer again, and they're blaming him for all their problems. You're the reason that all our problems have come upon us. Moshe returned to Hashem and said, my Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why have you sent me? From the time I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he did evil to this people, but you did not rescue people. Chapter 6, verse 1 closes out our parashot, Aliyot. Hashem said to Moshe, now you will see what I shall do to Pharaoh, for through a strong hand will he send them out, and with a strong hand will he drive them from this land. Baruch Hashem. That's the end of the reading. I want to get to a few insights. First and foremost, let me see here. I want to share this first, I guess, off the bat, from Rabbeinu Bachya. It says in chapter 3 in verse 19, Hashem says, except through a strong hand. So an insight here, because I mentioned, I think it was yesterday or perhaps the day before, that the idea of becoming a new creation is not something new in the New Testament, because there's really there's nothing new in the New Testament, actually. All of it comes from Jewish ideas. And the reason there's nothing new in the New Testament isn't because, God forbid, the Mashiach doesn't have any special insights, but that wasn't his purpose. The purpose of the Mashiach is not to come make something brand new. The purpose of the Mashiach is come to renew. Now, when you renew something in the case of the Messiah, it's as if it's brand new, but it's still not something completely new, because that would insinuate that there was something that was going on in the past is somehow flawed, which would mean that God was flawed, Chas v'Shalom. But anyway, it says, in either case, this expression emphasizes the extraordinary way in which the Jews were liberated. This is talking about through a strong hand. The Exodus was not an ordinary event explained in terms of simple historical processes. It necessitated a providential intervention and the use of the supernatural. Accordingly, pardon me, the people liberated from Egypt by a direct act of God would be described as a new creation, from Psalms 102:19, brought into the world to be dedicated to serving Hashem. So the idea of the people of God being a new creation dedicated to the service of Hashem actually goes back in Jewish thought all the way back to the Exodus. The purpose of the Exodus was so that we could be a new creation dedicated to the service of God, which is why the law of Moses was given after everything. Completely contrary to the typical theological idea. The typical theological idea is that Messiah came to rescue us from the law of Moses, to set us free from works. You do realize, I hope by now, that that is completely false. Messiah did not come to do away with the Torah of God, the law of Moses. He did not come to set us free from works. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Mashiach came so that we could do the law of Moses, so that we could do the works of God, because that's the purpose of the Exodus. The purpose of the Exodus is to make us new creations to serve Hashem. So why did Mashiach come? Mashiach came to set us free from Pharaoh, which is sin. That's why he came. And so that's the whole purpose of this. Again, is why we received the Torah at Mount Sinai after we were in Egypt, after the blood of the Lamb, after the Mikvah of the Red Sea. And then we receive the Torah. I also talked a lot about converts in this Aliyah, and we're going to be, it's throughout the entire Torah. But there's another insight here that talks about the open door. Because we think that since Mashiach came, now all of a sudden, the disciples were able to minister to Gentiles. And so all of a sudden, for the first time in Jewish history, it was Jew and Gentile, one a Messiah. That also is a false doctrine. We won't get into the Jew and Gentile, one a Messiah thing, but let's just start here by saying that Judaism has always been open to the nations coming in. It's fundamental to Judaism. In fact, the first Jew, Abraham, was first a Gentile before he became a Jew. So it says here in verse 22, my firstborn son is Israel, B'nai Vakori Yisrael. This is addressed to Pharaoh and through him to all mankind. Notice what? Yes, Rebbetzin asked if Zipporah was a convert. Yes, she was, 100% a convert. As was her father-in-law Jethro. But it says here, notice it says that God said to Pharaoh, my firstborn son is Israel. And the reason it says here that he said that to Pharaoh is because that message was to all mankind. This declaration defines the nature of Hashem's relationship with Israel. Until this point, the Hebrews were considered a wretched and pitiful people. Henceforth, they would be recognized as the object of Hashem's special attention. Israel earned this distinction by being the first people to acknowledge and worship the one true God. Yet, listen to this, yet Israel's designation as the exalted people of God does not preclude other nations from joining that family. Israel is not the only child, but the firstborn of a large family of nations. Thus, the honor conferred upon the children of Israel carries a grave responsibility. Israel must assume the role of the elder brother and as such must guide his brothers and sisters with faithfulness and devotion. This comes from an Orthodox rabbi named Rabbi Monk. Now, once you join the family of Israel, you become Israel, Jew, Israel, Hebrew, same things, all synonymous terms. You do that vis-a-vis conversion. This is why it says all tribes and tongues, because there are Irish Jews and French Jews and Russian Jews and Asian Jews and African Jews and Antarctican Jews. Maharal notes that Israel is called firstborn, despite having appeared as a nation upon the world scene only after the other nations were already there. He explains that this is consistent with the principle of Suf Maaseh B'machashava Tehillah. That which is last indeed is first in thought. So the first shall become last. Israel appeared historically only after the other nations in the same way that Adam, the purpose creation, appeared in the world at the conclusion of the 6 days of Genesis. So the first shall be last is also a Jewish concept. There's a whole bunch more. I think I'll share this. I'll do a screenshot of this page about Moses and the converts on the Ask the Rabbi. Let me share this one. She opened it and saw him the child. Now this goes back to chapter 2 and verse 6. V'tiftach v'tireha et hayeled. She opened it and saw the child. Now this insight is phenomenal because it relates the Shekinah of God, the presence of God to a child. So when we start talking about Messiah being a child, as it were, of God, that concept is actually embedded in the Midrashic interpretation. So listen to this. It says, the literal interpretation is that she saw the child. However, because of the unusual repetitive slika construction, the Midrash interprets that she saw the Shekinah hovering over him. This is also hinted at in the text by the silent preposition et. Now, so the reason they say the Shekinah was there, because if you look at the Hebrew text, it says, Vatiftach vetir ehu et, that's Aleph Tav, hayeled. So it says this is also hinted at by the fact that the Aleph Tav is there, indicating she saw something else with the child. So the sages say whenever the Aleph Tav is there, because the Aleph Tav, the et, is not a word that we translate. We don't say it when we translate, and there's really no meaning to it. So therefore, the sod level interpretation of that word is that there's something there that exists but is yet unseen. So there's something else with the child. The child was not alone in the basket. Furthermore, the suffix hu, him, added to the verb vetere, she saw, also designates the divine name as Etz Yosef points out. The vision could mean that the princess recognized the boy enveloped in light as being the child foreseen by the astrologers as the future liberator of Israel. So just like with Messiah, there were astrologers who saw that there was going to be a child born that was going to liberate the Jews. And so when the princess saw the child, she saw that child enveloped in light in a basket, and that was going to be the Redeemer of Israel. But what it also says, if you read that kind of through, it also reads that she saw the child, but the child was actually the Shekinah of God. You see? So it could be interpreted that she saw the child, but it says that it also could mean that she also saw the Shekinah, who was the child, if you understand what I'm trying to say. All right, I'm over my time, but can you give me just a couple of minutes? I want to share something else here to kind of close us out from the Midrash Rabbah. This is from Midrash Rabbah Shemot, chapter 3, Simon 6. God answered Moses. If you have to leave, that's fine, but you can come back and watch it later. Vayomer Elohim el Moshe. God answered Moses, I shall be as I shall be. Rabbi Abba bar Mamal said, the Holy One must be he, said to Moses, you wish to know my great name, but I do not wish to tell it to you. I am called, God says, according to my deeds. Sometimes I'm called El Shaddai, sometimes Zevaot, sometimes Elohim, and sometimes Hashem. When I'm judging my creation, I am called Elohim. And when I am waging war against the wicked, I'm called Zevaot. And listen to this one. This is my favorite one, okay? This is why I want to share this with you. When I suspend judgment for a person's sins and withhold the punishment he deserves, I am called El Shaddai. Now, let me share why I love that, aside from the fact that I personally relate to it. But El Shaddai, the gematria of El Shaddai, is equal to the name Memtet, which is why Memtet is said to be called by the name of the Holy One, blessed be he. Now we know that Memtet is Yeshua. So this is why Yeshua is so powerful, because he suspends our judgment and withholds the punishment we deserve. Now what's also powerful about this is that on every mezuzah, on the mezuzah itself and on the scroll inside is written the name El Shaddai. On the outside, if you have a kosher mezuzah and inside you have a kosher scroll, if you don't have a kosher scroll, you can get one at the fig tree. Just call Keturah. But anyway, you have the kosher scroll. On the back of every kosher scroll is written the name El Shaddai. And of course, on the mezuzah itself, you have the sheen, which symbolizes El Shaddai. Sometimes on the mezuzah, you'll see Shaddai written. Now, of all the names that Hashem could have written on a mezuzah, he writes Shaddai. Of all of his names, why is it that we have Shaddai? And the answer is because every time you walk by mezuzah, we are reminded that God has suspended our judgment and he has withheld from us the punishment we deserve. We deserve. We're reminded every time we walk by mezuzah, every time we kiss a mezuzah, we're reminded, God, thank you for having mercy on me, a sinner. Now it says, and when I am merciful towards my world, I am called Hashem. Representing nothing more than the attribute of mercy. As it says, Hashem, Hashem, God, compassionate and gracious. This is the meaning of I shall be, that I shall be, I shall be called according to my deeds. That's what that means. In the footnotes, Maharal writes, Maharal of Prague says, he explains that identifying God by a single name would be limiting him For a name points to a specific feature or attribute, while God encompasses all of creation. Any name we call him is thus just a description of the attribute we perceive at any given moment. He goes on to explain that the word Aliyah is a cognitive of Havaya existence, and that the name Aliyah Asher Aliyah is according to be understood. I am the one of whom naught shall be known except that he exists. The name Shaddai, it says, connotes that God says enough. Shaddai means, in other words, enough, it says here, enough to the affliction. Alternatively, the name Shaddai also alludes to the fact that God repels the accusing angels in order that they not harm the sinner. Wow. And finally, there's a footnote down here that says that we call God according to the name of his attribute that we need at the moment. This is why the name of Yeshua is so powerful, because what we need at the moment is salvation. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for being with me. It's been a pleasure to be with you this week. I pray that you have a great, wonderful, and blessed Sabbath. If you enjoy the content of this channel and you enjoy the ministry that we do at Sar Shalom Synagogue and Lapid Judaism throughout the world, I would ask you please to prayerfully and generously give to this ministry. We depend and rely upon your support, and whatever you can give will be a blessing, and may Hashem return it to you 1,000-fold. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Look forward to seeing you in the shul tomorrow. Hopefully, prayerfully, we'll have a great day, and God will be in our midst. Shalom Aleichem.